David, would you please explain, especially for those who didn't get the chance to read your book, the title, The Night of the Gun, the episode that gives the title to the book?
Yes. I did when I was a young man and a stupid one at that. I did a lot of bad things, and I was a thug. I was a bad guy. But one of the things was I never thought that I carried a gun. I was not a person who carried a gun. And so I went to my friend, I don't know if he's up there, that guy right in the middle, Donald, and about this one night, really bad night, when I was at his house and trying to get into his house and we were fighting, and I said, and then you pulled a gun on me and told me you were going to shoot me if I didn't go away. And he listened to my whole story about that night. He said, that's all true, except you were the one with the gun. And I was like, I never had a gun. And then the next guy that I went to talk to, I don't know if he's up there, I said that Donald said I came to his house with a gun. And how stupid is that? And he said, do you mean that 33 Smith & Wesson that you used to have? And I was like, well, I didn't remember it that way. I remembered myself as someone who didn't carry guns, and yet at the worst of it, I did. And part of the reason I didn't remember is I was a lunatic, I was a drunk, and I was a drug addict, but part of the reason is we really only remember what we want to. If you think of your great love in college and the breakup that happened, you have a story about how that happened, but he or she also has a story about how that happened. My book was about the difference between how people remember these two things. I'm sorry I don't have any Portuguese. Do you guys understand me mostly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And does addiction still represent a threat for you? Do you have to deal with every day? Like, how does it work?
I go to meetings and I don't drink or I don't use drugs, and most of the time, no big deal. Like, I was just at Flip and I was out late, I was dancing, I was having a good time, I was with everybody except I don't drink. When I drink, I get, how do you say in Portuguese, handcuffs? Yeah, that's how it ends for me. And just every once in a while, it's like a little guy that follows you around, and every once in a while, it will tap you on the shoulder and remind you. We took one of those rides from Prechi out into the jungle, and you go to the waterfall, you go to the water, and then we went to the Cachaça, the place where they make them. They have all these beautiful bottles, all these different colors, and I was sitting there looking at them, wondering, I wonder what would happen if and I decided to go and have a snack instead. If I decided to have a cachaça, or worse, a caipirinha. My wife had 3 at dinner the first night, and we were with the filmmaker Charles Ferguson, and she stood up from having 3 caipirinhas and immediately fell right on her ass. And if you remember the streets of aperitif, trying to get her home was like dragging a bag of water, like impossible. So it was good I was sober. I was just it was good that one of us was sober. So I tried drinking since I sobered up, and it didn't go well. It didn't. I didn't get into the drugs, but I don't know how you'd say it in Portuguese, but it's like I have an allergy to alcohol. Like I'm allergic to it. And I'm not against drinking. I think drinking is great. And I think I'm all for people having a really good time. I have the best time when I don't drink. I don't mind hanging around people who drink. I go out a lot. I see music a lot. I write about music a lot. But I'm just, when the people say, just have one, I say, one is too many and 1,000 not enough. And that's really true. That's not like a slogan. That really is true. Most people drink the cachaça and really, really good. I would want my own bottle. And just, that's how I do it. So.
Well, less than 2 weeks ago, the editorial board of the New York Times wrote an article supporting the national legalization of marijuana.
Right.
What's your opinion?
Eu
acabei de fazer uma pergunta sobre um artigo que o New York Times publicou há 2 semanas a favor da liberação, da legalização da maconha nos Estados Unidos.
My position is I don't care. I don't care about the legalization of marijuana. It seems fine to me. One thing I would like is if we're going to editorialize in favor of legalization of marijuana, I think we should quit drug testing employees. So we say, oh, marijuana should be legalized, but if you want to come to work at the New York Times, you have to piss in a cup. And that seems stupid. It's like, which of these things, right? I thought it would be a big deal. I thought when pot got, when Washington State, certain parts of the country legalized pot, and I thought, okay, here it comes. Nothing happened. No big deal. So I don't care. It makes no difference to me because, look, the U.S. puts far too many people in jail for a variety of offenses. So I care about that. And in terms of what I don't care about is people get so excited, like it's a major step forward for freedom that you can smoke pot. And it's like, it's not that big of a deal, really, one way or the other. I'm more interested in sort of what we're going to do about all the people like me. I was at Fala de São Paulo, and I went out to buy a scarf because it was cold out, and I was sitting on the deck and writing and smoking, which I'm still addicted to, and I went to buy a scarf, and it's Cracolandia, zombies. I'm more interested in like, what are we going to do about those guys? Should we lock them up? Should we make them? Can they be fixed up? I think that's much more of a problem. Whether people are stoned or not. I think you're stoned right now, I gotta say. I'm just kidding. Do they? I know you're not. Do they drug test here?
No.
Okay. Because I think.
Not yet.
Not yet. So I don't think we should run drug tests if we're going to be in favor of legalizing pot.
Can you explain to us how it works at the New York Times? The drug testing, you take it when you're admitted, or like
when you start, you have to go to a place and pee in a cup, and then they look at it, and I don't.
Like periodically or
No, just once. So if you want to work there, I guess you got to stop smoking pot before you start, and then you can start smoking pot again.
You were totally peeing, so.
I was sober, so I was happy to pee in a cup. No big deal. And I had friends who wanted to work there who asked me, "Would you pee in a cup for me?" I'm not going to tell you whether I did or not. Last Monday, I got to Rio, and I was going to go to Flip, but I wanted to have a column at work so I could pretend like I was working, right? While I was at Flip. And so I emailed Glenn Greenwald, and then I talked to his assistant, and his assistant got me referred me to this amazing hotel in Santa Teresa, Mama Ruisa, beautiful little hotel. You should go there sometime. And got me all hooked up beforehand. And then when I got here, we used WhatsApp to stay in touch, even though your internet sucks here. And it's a lot like America's. America's not very good either, but and stay in touch. And then he came and got me. We went up the mountain. I set a digital recorder out and interviewed him on the record for an hour. I sent that digital file to a transcriber that I work for. I pay her, work doesn't pay her, just because I wanted. Sometimes I would do it, sometimes she would do it. She's cheap. I was worried about sending it from Glenn's house, because I thought, well, will the NSA be on me then? Oh, who's this David Carr guy? What's he doing? But I was able to send that file from there, and then I made a video on my iPhone, because I'm trying to explain, oh, he's got these 12 dogs, and it's crazy here, and we're up in the jungle, and the one way to sort of explain that is I just did a 1-minute video of him that I was able to send to work. From there, I went home, wrote this story on the beautiful balcony of this little hotel, pushed the button, it went up to New York, and it got edited, they sent it back to me, and they edited the video, they sent it back to me, and then they pushed the button on the story, and in the story I got somebody's name wrong.
Two names. The dog?
Fuck! Why did you guys bring up the dog? They had 2 names wrong. One was a very important journalist, Jeremy Stayhill, not Jeffrey, Jeremy. And the other was the dog.
Sheila or
Shiva,
not Sheila.
And so right away on Twitter, people start beating the shit out of me about getting the name wrong. They didn't know about the dog, but they knew about the other guy. So I was able to call back or email and say I screwed up this name, which is a very big deal at the New York Times, probably is here too. And even though I got the correction, I mean, the story has a correction, and the dog, as you point out. And we talked a lot about should we correct the dog's name or not. You know, this is like this random dog from the favela that he picked up. Is it important? Yes, it's important. Let's fix it. But I was able to catch before the print edition went out. So the guy's name, and he's very self-promoting, this guy, so he would care desperately that I got his name wrong. I personally can't stand him, but I don't think anyone deserves to have their name butchered in the New York Times. So I was able to catch it. And then there was this huge, long debate on Twitter about whether the story was friendly or unfriendly, whether I was there to make fun of him.
Today it's good for a journalist because technology allows you to do a lot of fun stuff, good stuff. This is
Yeah, that was, I mean, that's an amazing transaction. I mean, we used to have to make, before I got there, I knew everything about him, all known thought, everything he had said, ever done. And we used to make journalism with, like 2 sticks and a rock and bang them together. And so, as a practitioner of journalism, in my backpack out there, I have more power in that backpack than the whole newsroom that I first walked into. And I think that the journalism that's being done now, if you're a consumer of journalism, is so much better, so much deeper, so much, because you know everything, you can see everything in real time. And I think it leads to better, deeper stories. It's made it so that magazines now read like books. There's so much packed into a magazine story. And daily stories now read like magazines used to, where in the day you have analysis built right in and stuff. I just think if you're consuming information or producing information, it's a great time to be a journalist because of technology. It's too bad that technology destroyed the business model that made it all possible. But I'm still saying it's a good time to be a journalist.
As for young journalists, for example, do you think that what are the skills that the journalists have to have? First, he has to be a good reporter, but do you think that they also have to know how to shoot a video, how to deal with, for example, SEO and audience matters and social media? What do you think about it?
Yes, I do. I'm going to teach at Boston University, and the class 1 day a week. I'm keeping my job. And the class 1 day a week is it's called Press Play, and it's about making and distributing content. And we're going to use an American content management system called Medium. Do you know what Medium is? Medium is the guy, Ed Williams, who made Twitter. Is that guy. And so I did a huge course outline all on Medium about making content, distributing content, making it better, all this big, long thing. And my teaching assistant, and please don't tweet this out, I don't want her to get in trouble. Are we in agreement, no Twitter about this?
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
I wanted her to send a link to all the kids in the class for my course outline, and she hit publish instead. And so my whole course line, including my cell phone number, my address, but everything else went out into the world. And I spent all of yesterday dealing with this, and I didn't want her to get in trouble, so I said, well, I'm just trying to be really transparent about what I do. But in there, the people that I'm bringing in, here, let me give you an example. When I was a young person, I worked at a weekly newspaper, and I did a story. My first story was about police violence, police beating up on. I live in Minneapolis, where a lot of white people, and they arrested these black guys and were just beating the shit out of them. And I did a big story about it, and the guys ended up getting fired. And but like about 30,000 people saw that, right? My daughter is, like a lot of you, 25, 26 years old. She did a story for Vice. Do you know Vice Media? They're in Brazil a little bit.
Yeah.
They're here because you guys have guns and drugs, which is two of their favorite topics. And beautiful women, of course. Life cares a lot about beautiful women, don't we all? And so she did a story for them about a guy who uses a 3D printer to make guns. The part of a gun you can't get on the internet, and 7 million people saw that. And so it's like, I went from doing like dads do, which pat her on the head, oh that's nice, you made a little movie, look at you, to asking her a lot of questions about how her video went viral, how she gets that much. Because I've been working on video for 9 years at the New York Times, and we just keep stinking it up. Our video, we just can't get it right. And so what does she know that I don't know, right?
What?
Well, you
do a great job on video in the New York Times.
It's okay. Her big, it's how do you take your content that you produced here, so you have the channel in the magazine, you have your magazine websites, but how do you get it over into, as you say, SEO, into the conversation? And with her, Vice really doesn't have that much traffic in and of itself. It's not that big of a platform, but it goes over to Reddit, which is like a message board, and it gets upvoted with a lot of momentum, and YouTube pays attention to it, and boom. She did 3 videos that had 20 million spin-outs. Yes. She did a video about these little tiny animals called tardigrades that can survive in outer space. I barely understood it, and it got like 12 million views. And it's like, what the fuck? I just can't. I am a digital adopter. As you point out, I work hard on video. I have a lot of followers on Twitter. I have a lot of fans on Facebook. But I'm a digital adopter. I'm an old man who figured some things out, and kind of. But being a digital native is different. Let me one more point about this. When Osama bin Laden was killed. You, of course, as a journalist, everyone wants to go toward that moment. You want a piece of that big story. And I noticed that the story first that the first sign of what was underway showed up on Twitter. That somebody heard the helicopter in Abbottabad or whatever it was. And so that it was, that the media part was the first sign of the capture and killing of bin Laden happened on Twitter. And so I started gathering information and seeing where the tweets were. And I went to our blog, our media blog, to write about it. And Brian Stelter, my younger colleague, 24 years old, he already had 800 words up. You know, I'm like, someone should write a blog about this. And I open up and there it is, and it's like, I'd like to fucking kill him. And what is the difference? What she knows that I don't know, what he knows that I don't know, is that the making and consuming of information are not discrete acts. That he was pulling stuff in the whole time and typing, right?
One of the most memorable scenes of the page 1 documentary film on the New York Times was your interview with the founders of Vice, and you gave them a very tough time in that interview. You interviewed a long time ago, and now they are huge. My question that connects to what you were just talking about is, what's your take, what's your opinion on this new standard of new journalism, new online journalism, like the one done by, for example, BuzzFeed with all those lists, and by Vice with all the bad taste that they have.
When the movie, I yell at this guy in Vice because he insulted my colleagues, right? And I'm a gangster when it comes to that. I'm strong for my people, right? And he was insulting the work of my colleagues, so that's why I yelled at him. But my daughter was working there at the time. She's like, thanks a lot, Dad. If you look at what happened in the Ukraine with the plane being shot down, or what's going on in Gaza, I think BuzzFeed and Vice have both done really important, good work. I mean, excellent work that's been followed, that has been strong. And if you think of old traditional media, people like me and Vice, we're marching toward each other, right? So I'm making little iPhone videos in the jungle of Glenn Greenwald. Every time they get some money, they're hiring really talented international reporters. And in the end, I don't know how you say in Portuguese, but in Spanish, los revueltos, the scrambled, will all be, the apple and orange will be a mango in the middle. And there's not gonna be, legacy media will have to strip out costs because the Vice's model, BuzzFeed's model, their advantage, a lot of it is not just, girls with their shirts off or lists or whatever. It's also on the cost side as well. They don't pay people as well.
So do you think it's possible to do good journalism without money?
No. No, I mean they're spending money on actual journalism, not oh, here's something on the web that I found and I'm gonna crack wise and make a joke about it or make fun of it, but actual things that contain information. Somebody has to pay for the phone calls, pay for the reporting, pay for the boots on the ground. And I don't think that user-generated content, which is what a lot of U.S. magazines are going toward, Forbes, Entertainment Weekly, it's in the U.S. it's the old story of Huckleberry Finn where Tom Sawyer is painting the fence. And he says to everyone, painting the fence is so much fun. Come and paint the fence. And you get your audience to come and make it. I don't think that's going to work. I mean, if I wanted to listen to a bunch of idiots telling me what they think, I'd go to a bar. I don't know what I mean? So I do think that professionally funded, professionally done content is going to play a very significant role going forward, because if you look at the web, at what's really working in a long-term way, what is the killer app? How do you say in Portuguese?
Matador?
Yeah, the killer app is news. Is news. If you have news, everyone will point to you.
My point is, in this country, like in many others, we are facing financial trouble, and
You closed some magazines, yeah?
Yeah. So of course, you see a lot of layoffs and budget cuts and all these things. In the other hand, to do good journalism, you have to have some money. What do you think is a model, a possible model for a native print company like yours, for example?
Well, I'm worried about prattling on in English. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Are we doing okay? If you want some translations, speak up. I apologize for my lack of Portuguese, which I will
Alguém quer
never learn.
tradução?
It's just too hard. I speak very bad Spanish, we can try that. I think that there is a turning toward the reader in the U.S. I think newspapers and magazines are a different case. For us, the revenue from readers, the subscriber revenues, for the first time in 2012, more money from readers than from advertisers. But it's partly because one was going down, right? And the other was going up. But we put up a paywall. Everyone said it was a terrible idea. It was a good idea. We had, 1.6 million people who pay us money for what's, either in print or on the web.
So we're making money with a paywall.
Yeah, we're doing well, but the what's going on with print advertising is making a bigger hole faster than we can fill. We were fine for a little bit, but like our last earnings last week, print advertising revenues down 6%. Still, the problem with advertising on the web, and you guys know this, but like in our paper, on page 3 of our paper, there's Tiffany's. You know Tiffany's? 100 years, always on page 3, right there, over and over. There's no same thing in the web. That's a scarce thing on the web. On the web, you can always make more. Somebody can always say, well, I can get you their audience cheaper. A lot of robots are doing the buying, machine buying. And so advertising it just keeps going down. And what I worry about with both newspapers and magazines as they lean harder and harder on consumers and saying, we need money from you, that they're giving them a shittier and shittier product. In the U.S., if you look at, like what does Time magazine cost, $5? You get a little teeny brochure. It's on bad paper. It's got some good work in it, but it doesn't seem fair, right? Whereas if I get Vogue weighs about 2 pounds, it's gorgeous, it's best in print, right? And so certain categories do really well. A lot of the magazine companies, if I were like looking to the US and saying what is working, what is not, Time Inc. is in a lot of trouble. They just got spun off, nobody wants them, they're doing cut. Certain of their magazines are doing okay. People is doing okay. People's website is doing okay. But I would look more toward Hearst and what Hearst is doing. A lot of marketing, a lot of blended campaigns, very serious investment in the web, a lot of different hiring. But you're in one room, right? And you want to get to the other room, and we're in that long, dark hallway. It was very scary, right? And some of our friends are getting killed on the way. And so it's a transition. The journalism may be golden age, but it feels really scary. And what's in the room at the other end is it's probably a smaller business, right? We're doing it too. New York Times had a branded campaign for Netflix on women's prison. It did really, really well. We've all been in the branded content business for a long, long time. Your magazines have special sections from advertisers. We've had, in our paper it's like China Today, and it's just propaganda, over and over. So it's not new. It's only new because it's on the web. And what we're fighting is sort of news or information, it's a list on the phone, right? It's a list. It is. Regardless of what the product. And to get advertising in there, there's no room. There's no room anywhere. So you got to get it onto the list. And so you come up with branded information that's on that list. And the advertisers want it to look just like your editorial. And people who are not in advertising don't want it to be confused. Those fights are being fought like over and over, like certain U.S. magazine, Atlantic magazine got in a lot of trouble for something they did for Scientology. I think the bigger problem is scale. To make really good branded content super expensive. And so how do you create good customized content that totally works? And it's like that Netflix thing we did was great and amazing, but we probably need to do like one of those a day, not one of those a year. And so making great branded content is no different than making great editorial content. You have to have really smart people who find interesting stories and execute the hell out of them. So I think it's a scale issue. I'm less worried about the sort of religious, theological, church and state. I think that stuff will get worked out. But and the other thing that I worry about is when you're a drowning man or woman, everything looks like a lifeboat. Everything looks like, so now it's a couple of years ago, SEO, that's it. SEO, that's what we gotta do. And it's like, screw SEO. It's all about social media. You gotta be in the stream over and over. Well, no, wait. It's actually about branded content. That's what's gonna save us. And I'm worried about anything that's like, the next big thing gets hopped on. If you think of social media and how people started to game that over and over, so that like Upworthy and BuzzFeed took over Facebook. Well, Facebook just turned some knobs and they went like that. If you don't own your platform, then your platform kind of owns you. And so you got to be really careful about giving over your custody of business to any certain way of doing it. That makes sense? Or? Yeah. It's a really good question. I mean, it's about
like
there's new metrics like reader engagement, not clicks. And in the U.S., people are looking a lot more at time spent. I mean, Huffington Post in the U.S. is part of it is you put a high quality skin, but you go underneath and where a lot of traffic is, how do you say in Brazil, side boob? Or some celebrity getting out of a car that doesn't have any underpants on, or stuff like that. And so there's businesses in the U.S. Upworthy was one, HuffPo and BuzzFeed, where if you click this link, it will change your life. Yeah. Click this link to see the most bizarre story you've ever. And you click it, and it's a nothing schmuckin'. And I do think that so if we say news is going to be a list, clicking on something, I think you better come through. I think you better bring the goods and not just have a link to one of your old stories or a link that is a little bit on top of someone else's story, because time is precious. And I mean, it's great. On Twitter right now, once every second, there's something about the New York Times. And it helps us access a demographic, a group of people that we would never get to otherwise. It would be all old people like me. And on Twitter, we can access, but when they hit the button, you got to come through. Because time is precious. You're in this fight against all this clutter. And I do think that clicks long run, it just isn't going to work because of what's going on in advertising. It just long term won't work.
Quem tem perguntas?
Why is it only dudes? Go ahead.
Do you think media companies should bet on Facebook as a channel of distributing contents on a long term?
I don't oddly know a lot about Facebook. Like, I personally can't stand it. I'm much more of a Twitter person. I used to say a lot of terrible things about Facebook because I, as a user, but if you look at mobile, the list that I was talking about, 60% of their revenues are now from mobile. They decided and started over 4 years ago and turned toward mobile ferociously and really have the earnings to show for it. So in terms of, can you bank on Facebook? What is good for Facebook will continue, but like if what you do is not good for them, they will kick you to the curb immediately. They don't care about media. They don't care about if being in the stream helps them, great. If it doesn't, they don't care.
I'm sorry to divert the subject, but I have a question about the book.
Oh, please.
Here in Brazil, we had a discussion earlier last year about biographies, authorized biographies and stuff, because some very prestigious artists in Brazil were against news reporters writing non-authorized biographies.
Right.
And then we had like this huge argument here in the press, and now you, on the other hand, made the most difficult biography because it's your biography, but with the research that a real biographist does. It's not a self-biography in itself. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how it was to maintain some how can I say, subjectivity into something that is so much yours.
Yeah, well, I mean, to the issue of biography, authorized or not, you guys, I mean, some of your magazines deal in celebrity, yes? Correct. So you call a publicist and you say, we're not doing anything right now, or we don't like the last story that you wrote, or we hate that writer, or whatever they say. The sky is blue today, so go away. I don't think we should ever wait for permission about who we write about. And I think that I've done a lot of celebrity profiles, a lot of them, because I used to cover the Oscars and because I've done magazine work. And by the time you get done negotiating the access, there's almost nothing left that you can talk about or say. You know, don't ask about, this or that, or don't. I just did a story about Robin Wright from House of Cards, and she used to be married to Sean Penn. And they're like, you can't ask her about Sean Penn. And I said, well, she was married to the dude for like 20 years and had 2 kids with him. No, I'm gonna ask about Sean Penn. And I asked her about him and she wouldn't talk about it, but it's not like I didn't write about it or anything like that. In terms of like what I did, it's sort of a gimmick, a little bit of a gimmick. It's a commercial gimmick. This is the drunk memoir, but it's different, it's better because of X, right? But I was trying to write a very commercial book, but also a very truthful one. And so some of the things that I put in there, like there's a part in there where where I'm doing violence against women. And in my current job, it's bad. And my brother at the time said, look, you know that girl came at you with a knife, or all the circumstances that led to it, right? And I was like, if I try and shave off one little corner, like pull out one little stick, and then the whole thing will fall down. And so I decided I just will put it all out there. And I pay a price sometimes. Like if Fox News doesn't like something I write, they'll put a big picture up of me and the word crackhead next to it, but that's okay. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't ask for permission. Let's just gonna go back because they're running out of time to the Glenn Greenwald story. You went to Rio. To his house, and you wrote a piece, a very ironic piece of journalism about him, describing the place where he lives in the middle of the jungle, surrounded by dogs, with lousy internet connection, and saying that at the same time he's the key person of the new website First Look,
Correct.
which is funded by the owner of eBay.
Right, all true.
My question is, do you think it's possible to have independent journalism done by someone who support causes, someone who is an activist?
Yeah, we've been talking about that a lot in the U.S. and here in Brazil, because in the newspapers they say, well, here's the editorial page, but here is the news, right? And in most of South America, there is no tradition of independent journalism anyway, right? That everybody's, but in Brazil, you have a strong, you guys help build and support democracy through the work that you did. But that's a form of activism too, is we don't want judges or the army or whoever deciding that we want the people to decide. So it's real complicated about where activism ends and where journalism starts. I mean, I've been on a huge, if you go back and look at the Obama administration came in promising to be the most open administration in U.S. history. They're the most secretive. They fight secret wars with secret kill lists, drone strikes. And I've been writing about that over and over again. Now, I'm a columnist, but we've done a lot of work as a newspaper to expose that. I mean, Glenn Greenwald, Laura Poitras pulled back the blankets on, they let Americans know that their own government was spying on them. They won a Pulitzer Prize. It's hugely important. Whether it sprang from activism or not, it is journalism. It created change. The president was forced to address it. We all had to do stories about it. So it looks like journalism to me, even though, if you talk to Glenn, his politics are, he sounds like Che Guevara, right? But that doesn't mean his work has stood the test of time. He doesn't bend facts to make his point.
David, thank you very much for the talk. It was a great pleasure talking to you. Obrigado a todos vocês pela paciência e pela presença.